Men of Reddit who proposed and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? My mother told my father no 3 times. On the 3rd time he got wasted at a local bar and basically started pouring his heart out to anyone who'd listen. Mind you, it's a very small village in the Italian Alps and my father barely spoke Italian and no one in the village spoke English, including my mother. Word got back to my mom about this sad American at the bar, so she went to find him and she told him she'd marry him. My parents celebrated their 44th anniversary last month. This sounds like a genuinely romantic movie. She was an art major and I had just joined the army. We had been lovers since high school. I asked, she said no. She wanted to get her master's. We were friends for a while but we don't talk anymore. She works as a bartender I think now. I ended up getting married to my best friend. We've been married for more than a decade and have a 5-year-old son. My friend A had been with his girlfriend B for years, so he decided he wanted to propose. What he didn't know is that B was also thinking about proposing to him. A proposed first, and B freaked out because she had already set her proposal and bought a ring, so she said no. Over the next week, B freaked out more and more and refused to answer A's calls and messages. Then decided to use the money he had saved up to buy a plane ticket to Europe. What was supposed to be a 3-month trip through Western Europe turned out to be a year-long trip around the world. One day, A says that he's coming back and B decides to go and wait for him at the airport and propose to him there. It turns out that while being in Peru, A met a girl and they fell in love almost immediately and got married in Peru. 5 years later, A and his Peruvian wife are still happily married and recently had a baby, while B hasn't still quite forgiven herself for ruining her relationship with A. I don't understand why B would say no if that was what she wanted to. My mum actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger, not because they weren't in love, but because she wasn't sure if it was something she actually wanted to do, rather than something that society expected of her or whatever. They still stayed together and had kids, hence why you're reading this now. And then when my dad was terminally ill a few years ago, my mum plucked up the courage and asked him. Just to get her back after all those years, he said no before taking her up on the offer a few days later. He died a happy man. For a bit more context on this, it was actually 2 declined proposals, not just one. Both pre-children too, so let's say I'm lucky. Also, when they did get married, it wasn't purely an action for the estate or whatever. They already had wills etc sorted. It was just one of those last great days as a family. In fact, my sister and I were the only 2 present at the registry office. And when I say office, they literally squeezed us into one of the registrar's offices as there was a big waiting list for weddings and we didn't know how long he had. He died 3 months later, so we were all hugely grateful for them for helping us out like that. I'm so sorry for your loss. That was a beautiful story. As a woman who was engaged and the proposal was later revoked, it still stings a little 11 years later. When you're sure you're with the love of your life, losing them can really pop a hole in your life plans. We met in her home country of Germany while I was traveling. I knew I was in love. We dated long distance for a while, me flying to Europe, her flying to the US. I suggested marriage so we could be together. She said no a few times. I didn't press. But I was patient and not being pushy. I knew she was worth the wait. Then it hit her, that's how we could be together. If we got married, we could live in a country together. The difficulties of being born on a different patch of dirt. A few years later, I'm still married to my best friend and living with her in Germany. Not all no's stay no. Life goes on. Not all no's stay no, and therefore, Your Honor. My husband asked 3 times in the span of a couple months. We had dated for 3 years. He was ready. I wanted to graduate college first. Also, don't propose by handing your sew a ring while you're both in the car on the way to Burger King. I'm low maintenance, but put some thought into it. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married, have 3 children, and are both still very much in love. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while, but he did it. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker and they've been married 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he never would have gotten clean. It was the lowest points in his life, but it all brought him to my mom, who makes him happier than ever. My dad talks to her sometimes. She got married to someone else and they had a son who died from a medical condition. Well, that story went well until the last 6 words. She had cancer. I said we should get married because I had full medical coverage from my work. She said no, and over time we grew apart. Haven't talked to her in 15 years. Don't know if she died. This is the story of my parents. My dad asked my mom to marry him several times. She said no, several times. One day my dad asked my mom to marry him, yet again. She said yes. He freaked out and left her apartment and dumped her. 3 weeks later he hated his life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They were married 9 months later for 16 years until my mom passed from cancer. They loved each other so much and had such a deep appreciation for each other. That was 25 years ago. My dad has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mama. Dad, marry me. Mom, no. Dad, marry me. Mom, no. Dad, marry me. Mom, yes. Dad, well, now I am not doing it. Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said I don't know. A couple months later I asked her again. She said maybe. I was pretty bent out of shape. But then I found out she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there really. Dang dude, I'm sorry about your friends. Genuine crap bags of people to knowingly sleep with your girl. I hope you find better friends. We received a letter from the immigration office saying that she was lacking some documents. At the moment we were stressed, both of us, with work and study, and none of us were sufficiently fluent in German to decipher this kind of language. We went to the university office for foreign students. The lady in charge translated to us the letter badly, telling us that even presenting the documents they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked. Looking for some more help, we ended in the city hall. With the adrenaline rush, I proposed to her in quite a loud voice. If we get married, could we stop the deportation? I asked to the poor guy in the information office. I can't remember if he gave us an answer. I want to marry her. Will you marry me? She started laughing. I started laughing. The guy in the office gave us the telephone to the pertinent department and asked us to call. We went out of the city hall and we couldn't stop laughing. She said to me, well, thank you, but let's wait a bit. After the weekend we went to immigration office and the people there explained which documents were missing, how to get them. She wasn't denied the visa and we kept living in the way we planned. It was intense and, in retrospective, really funny. Addendum, we are not married and never planned, but we live together. She got a job that provides her with a visa. Soon she will present herself to citizenship exam. Sue, did you marry her? I was a young Marine. I was only home during the weekends. Was dating this girl for about a year from my hometown. When I asked, she said yes. Her dad, former Navy, kept saying we should wait. We put it off for a bit longer. Fast forward another year. She dumped me. Father informs me she has been sleeping with a lot of guys. Like more than 50 over the 2 years we dated. And was very happy I didn't marry her, and apologizes to me for her behavior. She then totally ghosting everyone including her family for about 6 months. Find out she moved 7 hours away and was living under a house. Not a basement, under a house with her new BF. She calls her mom to come get her. Mother and father ask me to go get her and bring her home. Good times. Good times. My mom and dad were not married and wanted a kid and had me. My dad, being Catholic and Hispanic, decided he wanted to be married to my mom and proposed. She said no because she hadn't been divorced from her first husband for very long and now had 3 young kids and preferred to stay not married. He threatened to leave her and got on his motorcycle and started to drive away until my mom chased him down and gave in, leading to what my parents call the voodoo wedding the same day. I'm going to need more details about the voodoo wedding if you have them. I asked her right out of high school, but she wasn't ready. We stayed together, went to college at the same school, spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together, got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up. What a wholesome story, unilateral faces. In 2017, Google came up with this idea to allow you to make photo books out of your Google Photos account. My girlfriend and I had been dating for almost 2 years and I knew she was the one I wanted to marry. So I created this wonderful photo book of all of our selfies together and ended it with a page made out of a photo I generated that said, "Will you marry me?" I then proceeded to put all these things into an album and build the photo book. What didn't occur to me at the time was that the album I put these in was a shared album and the other person gets a notification when you add new photos to it. And the other person that the album was shared with? My girlfriend. That evening, we had dinner and it all came out. She saw the photo. She wasn't ready. There were a few reasons why, but they were good reasons and smart reasons, mostly to do with timing, family, and finances. We weren't breaking up. We just weren't getting engaged at that time. A year later, we have fully discussed the concept of getting married. We went ring shopping. She picked her own ring. And by the time I actually did propose, we both knew what her answer would be. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary in April. It seems to have worked out so far, and the photo book is on a shelf to my left as we speak. I'm a firm believer that the only surprise in a proposal should be how you are proposing. Not that you are, she, or he, should know that it is going to happen at some point but not know how. Marriage is a big deal and should be discussed extensively beforehand as it is a huge legal agreement. I'm glad it ended up working out for you. The photo book idea is really sweet. My mom told my dad no when he proposed to her even though they were already living together. She thought he was impotent and it wasn't until she got pregnant that she said yes. In retrospect, I wish my parents had decided early in their relationship that they can barely stand each other. I think you meant infertile. Impotence is an inability to perform the physical acts, normally referring to not being able to maintain an erection. I spoke to her about it beforehand, and she seemed really keen on the idea. So I decided to propose about a week after in front of all our friends. She was so shocked she picked me up off my knee and shooed me away. Most of our friends were confused because everyone knew it was going to happen, and she said she was excited for it. I didn't know what to do. It was all really embarrassing, and later she explained she didn't mean no, she just didn't know what to say and was scared. She said yes after apologizing profusely, and just this year we celebrated our 9th anniversary. I feel like the next time I tell someone it as an icebreaker they're going to say I read this on Reddit. My dad maintains to this day that my mom never said yes till she said I do. She laughs when she's nervous and never actually said yes, but put the ring on while laughing. He took it as a yes. They will be married 39 years come August. Together 44. Not my story, but someone I'm friends with. They both had crappy homes and became a couple at 14. Somewhere around 20 he proposed to her. She said she wasn't ready to commit yet. After that he'd propose to her every year, partially in hopes she would be ready, but it was also kind of a ritual where he would show her that he's still serious. She would say no every time. In their late 20s he was done with his studies. She could see the finish line, so she told him she's ready, meaning marriage and eventually children. That's when he gets second thoughts about marrying the only woman he ever had a relationship with, and he wasn't sure if he was making a mistake. They went on a break. She went to the US from Europe to do her PhD at the MIT. They drifted apart more. She moved on and found a new long-term relationship with a partner that's a lot better for her, while he quickly regretted ending the relationship and started fricking whoever he could find on Tinder without being able to form a meaningful relationship after. That turned dark real quick. We'd been dating for a year and a half, and I was due to move out on orders. Was in the army. She suggests we get married. I said no way. I was going off to school. Army type, for 6 months. Then a year on a deployment to the Middle East. It just wouldn't work. She was calm, and then said, "You think I'll be a burden to all of that, but I'll actually be a help." While just seconds earlier all I could think of was what a pain in the butt it would be to get married and leave. And now it, for whatever reason, seemed perfectly reasonable that she was right. We got married a week later at the courthouse. I was 22. Last month we had a nice socially distant dinner party for our 29th anniversary with our 2 amazing kids and a few friends. She was right, lol, and good job. My mother turned my father down, but didn't outright break up with him. She just wasn't sure about the marriage idea. She valued her independence and was nervous about commitment. No hard feelings, though. He called up the next day when she'd had more time to think about it, and she said yes after all. They celebrated 32 years of marriage last month. Just the fact that they could say those things to each other and still be respectful and friendly, loving, that's the key there. She had said she wasn't really a fan of marriage, so I thought proposing non-marriage might be well received, and I wanted us to be together for the rest of our lives. So I asked her not to marry me. She said no. We have been married for 10 years. Pulled the Ole reverse card on her. She said yes on the second proposal and now we're divorced. For those wondering, I've been single for a year. I spent last night with a smart, beautiful woman and had a blast. Life is good. My life is now complete and I can die knowing I made a difference. We actually got married, moved in together. 2 weeks later, she moves out, blocks me everywhere and never gave me a reason. Shortly after I was served with papers. Now I'm divorced. That was last summer and not sure where I am now. Making work my main priority for now. I just want to know why for some closure, but that's too far gone now. She said yes as I had a special occasion planned. One of those observation wheels and I proposed at the very top and we were on our way to a family event and I had a ring made and everything. Then a few days later she said no. Everything fell apart. I was distraught. We continued dating for a while but it was long distance. Other side of the world. When I visited it would be super awkward. Eventually he dad kicked me out. Was flying standby and was stuck in an airport for 4 days. Took me years to recover. Now I am happily married and I'm glad it never worked out. I was not in a good place when I met her and her family was super controlling. It would never have worked. The woman I married is super cool and is my best friend. Turned out better than expected. Dang, that's messed up. We were dating for a little over a year but I was so sure she was the one. I drove 2 hours to see her at her college and went on a beautiful winter night walk and proposed. She looks me right in the eyes and said, "Oh, you thought this was serious? Well, I don't know how to say this other than I have been saying other people. Well, actually I have been seeing other women." I was stunned. I got up, put the ring in my pocket and walked to my car, got in and drove away, never looking back, crying the whole time. Haven't seen or spoken with her in 7 years even though she has tried countless times to reach out. Now it's a story I tell friends who are nervous about asking their significant others to marry them, reminding them that even if they say no it could be worse. I can't decide if telling them the story is a really good or really bad idea. About 2 years later I met my wife of 22 years. We are happily married. The one who said no got married for the first time last year and seems happy. My wife is way into me in ways that the former girlfriend never was, and I see my life as far happier with my wife than I ever was with the one who said no. She's not a bad person. I was just young and in love with someone who wasn't in love with me. It worked out for the best. I'm glad she said no. Not sure if this count, but I proposed. She said yes, but 1 month before the wedding she took it back. This is what happened immediately with my life. I personally lost about $3,000 worth of deposits. My parents and her parents lost about $4,000 each on deposits. Me and my parents are working class, so it took years for us to financially recover from this. I spent $2,200 on a ring I didn't want. My biggest regret, and will say this anyone who listens, the engagement ring chain I bought it from wouldn't take it back. I took it to pawn shops and they'd only offer a few hundred. This engagement ring store bank on customers who wants the whole ring, stone, band, setting. If you're going to buy a ring, just buy the stone or gold band. Setting you can get a better deal from a local jewelry store. Apparently my gem I bought was crap. Most of the cost of the ring was BS. Most of my family was from out of state and a lot of people were peeved because they cancelled their flight. I had to go to the air, so I didn't leave my room. I couldn't take any calls because everyone was pee and I didn't want to hear it. I was depressed and just stayed in bed. One day my roommate grabbed me and took me to the ER where the doctor treated me for severe dehydration and an infection. What happened when I got over it? I became stronger for it. I didn't propose to anyone until a decade later. Honestly, there wasn't anyone that I didn't love deeply enough to be in a committed relationship. But when I proposed I was in my 30s. Our relationship was more mature than my first time I proposed. We're now married for 13 years. She's my best friend. When I have good news, she's the first person I want to tell it to. When I have bad news, she's the first person I want to tell it to. I financially recovered as well. I learned my lesson about the engagement ring. Only paid $300 for it. She loved it and treasures it. After our 10-year milestone, we were doing so well. I told her to pick a wedding ring of any cost. She refused. She still wears that cheap $300 ring and loves it. I was proposed to several times by men when I was living in the Middle East. I think they just went and found the next American girl to propose to. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.